Thank you for joining us for today's presentation. My name is Stella Doggery, and I'm excited to walk you through the core project design principles that can be applied to strengthen and advance public health initiatives. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Dean Joshi, Kemi, Laura, and Michelle, and the entire School of Public Health. So let's get started. On the agenda today, we'll cover the background of project design, and common project design challenges. So for the background, these are the areas we'll cover: understanding what projects and programs are, what is project design, why project design matters, when a project design is missing, and the common project design challenges. Defining a project. A project is a short-term, organized effort designed to achieve a specific goal within a defined timeline and scope. It produces a unique outcome, such as an event, a report, training, or a tool created to meet a particular need. Projects typically have a clear start and end point, which help guide planning, resources, and evaluation. With projects, you always have a project manager who will coordinate schedules, deliverables, and mitigate risks, and also manage team activities. Usually with a project, success is measured on whether the deliverables were completed on time, within budget, and according to scope. In short, projects often support a larger strategic goals by contributing focused and measurable results. In public health, projects are especially useful for rapid response. For example, a 6-month project might involve hosting a community listening session to identify barriers to preventative care, followed by data analysis and a final summary. This structure provides flexibility, adaptability, while maintaining clear accountability. Next, what is a program? A program is an ongoing and it's long-term. And what normally happens with the program, you have different projects all with the same goal in mind. So for instance, if we have a community engagement program, this may include health fairs, ambassador trainings, outreach programs, and listening sessions. Each of these projects contribute to improve public trust and health equity. So in short, a project is a group of tasks, and a program is a collective group of projects. And on this slide, you will see the clear difference: what is a project and what is a program. So this is going to be a good point to reflect why you want to do a project design. The reason why we do project design is it helps us develop a blueprint which guides a project from idea to implementation. A project design is structured. It's a structured approach, and also aligns goals, resources, and timelines. And this ensures a predictable outcome. On the next slides, why does project design matters? It defines the project's purpose and direction. It ensures alignment among stakeholders, improves efficiency and resource use. Other reasons why a project design matters: it reduces risks, it improves communication. So when you have a good project design, I can almost guarantee you that you will have a successful end result, because the project design sets the foundation for everything. So what happens when you decide to go ahead and have a project and skip the project design phase? Well, you run into a lot of risks or problems or issues. For example, lack of clear direction, poor resource planning, increased risk and surprises, weak stakeholder alignment, difficulty measuring progress or success, low accountability. All these can be avoided when you design your project from scratch day one, when you design it properly. And also the biggest thing with project design is you have to include your stakeholders. On the next slide, we have common project challenges. And this list is not, this is not just all the challenges. This is just a brief overview of the challenges. If you want to avoid inadequate planning, limited resources, communication breakdown, stakeholder misalignment, changing requirements, developing a good project design will limit some of these challenges. I'm not saying you will not have these challenges. You may, but the impact will be less when you have a good project design. Now, for the next part of the presentation, we'll hone in to the project design, and we'll cover the key principles for project design framework, the design cycle, the core processes, requirements, stakeholder engagement, design documentation, deliverables, and quality risks and success factors. Key principles for project design. The first one is value. This principle holds that every choice you make while designing a project, big or small, should be judged by whether it adds meaningful value to the project's goal, to the stakeholders and the end user. In other words, don't design for the sake of design. Design for the sake of value. Why does this matter? In project design, it's easy to get distracted by, for instance, nice to have features, personal preferences, complex ideas disguised as innovation, activities that sound good on paper, but don't improve the outcomes. The next one is stakeholders. This principle emphasizes collaboration over assumption. It means that people who are affected by a project should be actively involved in shaping it, not just receiving the final product or plan for decisions after the project has already been implemented. Instead, when you start with a project, always be in constant communication with your stakeholders. This means you're going to co-create, you're going to co-decide, you're going to co-validate, you're going to co-own the design. And why does this matter? Stakeholders know their needs better than anyone else. When you include them in the design process, you get real insight and not guesses. The other reason is it increases buy-in and trust. People support what they help create. Collaboration reduces resistance and increases adoption. What you want is, after your project is done, you want your stakeholders to totally buy into into the design and also adopt whatever prototype or event or whatever the project may be. You want to sell them this idea. And when they're involved, they are already invested. The other thing, it creates better realistic solutions. Stakeholders can point out practical limitations, operational realities, what will work and not work. This prevents costly redesigns later. The other reason, it also reduces blind spots. Designing for people without their input often leads to misaligned priorities, overcomplicated processes. The next part is systems thinking. Systems thinking means looking at the project as a whole system, not just separate parts. Instead of focusing on one task or component in isolation, you consider how the activities, people, processes, resources, and design all connect, influence, and impact one another. And what this really means, when you make a change in one part of your project, it can have ripple effects on other areas. Systems thinking helps you anticipate these effects and design smarter. For example, if you change a workflow, it may affect staff needs, and that may change the training plan, and that will also impact your budget, causing the timeline to shift. So everything is connected. The next part is tailoring. Tailoring means adjusting your project design methods, tools, processes, so that they fit the specific situation, rather than using one size fits all. For instance, you cannot use a project design for an event. You cannot use that project design, the same project design for the event for, let's say, community outreach. They have different components. So you have to make sure that you tailor the project based on the needs and also based on what your stakeholders want. On the next slide, we look at our project framework. What is a project framework? A project design framework is a structured approach for planning, organizing, and guiding how a project is created. From defining the problem to shaping the solution, to planning activities, engaging stakeholders, and determining how success will be measured. The next part, we'll look at the cycle. What's involved in a project design cycle? Where there are 5 elements that are involved in this cycle. The first one is initiate. This is the starting point of the project. You will, in this phase, you clarify why the project exists. A project charter, which is a document, is created, which outlines the purpose, the goals, high-level scope, and key stakeholders. In this stage also, leadership formally authorized the project to move forward. So if your project design doesn't meet this criteria, chances are leadership will not, or stakeholders or investors will not sign off on this, because you have not given them a reason to invest in you, or they don't have the confidence in what your project is going to deliver. And the objective for this is to establish the project's identity and secure approval to begin planning. The outcome of this stage is a project is officially launched. The next stage is define. In the define stage, you're looking at the requirements and constraints. Here, you develop a deeper understanding of what the project must achieve. Rather, you're going to gather detailed requirements from the stakeholder, identify constraints such as budgets, timeline, policies, risks, and resource limitations. The objective here, you're going to make sure you fully understand what the project must deliver, what the boundaries are, and the outcome is a clear understanding of what the solution must achieve. And then the next stage is design, also known as the solution architecture. In this phase, you create the actual solution. You develop the project's designs, workflows, processes, technical structure, and outline requirements that will meet the end goal. And in this stage as well, you are going to identify dependencies and other components that will support your project. The objective of doing this is turning those requirements into practical, workable solutions. In other words, your design phase is your blueprint, how this project is going to be executed. The next stage is validate. These are reviews and prototypes. Before final approval, you must test and verify the design. You conduct reviews with the stakeholders, build prototypes, wireframes, or samples to confirm that the design works as intended. And at this stage, you also have the opportunity to adjust the design based on feedback. And stakeholder feedback is very important because they will tell you how this design or this project is going to affect them. So listening to your stakeholders for input at this stage is very, very important because it will save you time and money when you implement your project. And the main objective for the project design stage is to ensure accuracy, feasibility, usability, alignment before commitment. And the outcome is a confirmed design that is feasible, usable, and aligned. The last stage is baseline, which is approval and documentation. This is the final step. Final design documents are completed and approved. The design is baselined, meaning it becomes the official controlled version of the project. Changes after this point require formal change management. The objective for the baseline is establishing a stable and approved reference for implementation. So before you implement anything, the baseline has to be signed off. And that means when everybody signs off, everybody's happy and systems go. So in summary, 5 phases guide a project from the initial authorization to a fully validated, formally and approved design that is ready for implementation. Within the 5 phases, in the design phase, which is the third step, these are the core design processes. So these refer to the major design dimensions of a project. Each describes how a specific aspect of the project should be planned, structured, and controlled during the design phase. First one is scope design. In this phase, you're asking, what work will be done? Scope design defines the boundaries of the project, what is included and what is not. It clarifies the deliverables, the features, the services, and the outcomes of the project. And the objective for this phase is it prevents scope creep and ensures everyone understands exactly what the project is delivering. Now you might ask, what is scope creep? Scope creep happens when new tasks, features, changes are added to the project after it has been started. You can implement these changes, but your timeline, your budget, and resources do not change. So that means it goes back to how you start the project. You have to plan to avoid scope creep. Now, sometimes scope creep is, you cannot avoid this because, like, for instance, let's say your project depends on you receiving funds from the federal government. If they have a shutdown, you cannot, you cannot avoid that. But what you need to do is factor in that possibility or that risk. The next stage is schedule design. In this stage, you are asking yourself, what work will be done? Schedule design determines the timeline, major milestones, sequencing of activities, dependencies, and overall flow of the project. Here, you create a realistic, achievable timeline for the project. And in this stage, make sure yes, sometimes your stakeholders may have a deadline, but make sure you plan accordingly. You don't want to tell your stakeholders you're able to deliver a product in 3 months. And yet, you have to, in this phase, you cannot tell your stakeholder you can deliver a project in 3 months, fully knowing that there is a task within your project that will require you to at least put in a whole month of work. That's not feasible. So when you do your timeline, plan for incidents, plan for risks, plan for anything possible that can happen. Give yourself a generous timeline. The next stage is cost design. How much will it cost to do this project? Cost design involves estimating all project expenses such as labor, material, equipment, vendors, and anything that you need to support or to execute your project. Build a realistic budget that aligns with the scope and schedule. Number 4 is quality design. What level of quality is required? Quality design defines the standard, the criteria, and the controls that ensure project outputs meet the expectations. The objective here is to prevent defects, reworks, misunderstanding about what looks good. It's not about what looks good. The question that you need to ask yourself is this does this project, does this service, does this product, is it of quality? The number 5 is resource design. What resources are needed? Resource design identifies the people, the skills, the equipment, the supplies, and other assets required to deliver the project. Here, you're going to ensure the project has the right capacity at the right time. And number 6 is communication design. How will the information be shared? Throughout the process, it is very important to communicate to your stakeholders, to your team. Communication design outlines what needs to be communicated, to whom, by whom, how often, and using which channels. This keeps stakeholders aligned and informed. So in summary, these 6 areas ensure the project is designed in a complete and balanced way. Scope, what will we deliver? Schedule, when will we deliver it? Cost, what will it cost? Quality, what looks good, or what good looks like? Not what looks good, but what good looks like. Resources, who and what we need. Communication, how are we going to keep everyone aligned and informed? The next part is requirements and stakeholder management. First, we look at the requirements. Project design requirements describe what the project must deliver to meet stakeholder needs and achieve project objectives. They form the foundation of the design and guide all technical, functional, and operational decisions. The reason for requirements: it creates a shared understanding of expectation, ensures the design is aligned with stakeholders' needs, prevents misunderstandings, rework, and scope creep. It enables accurate planning for cost, schedules, and resources. Now, there are types of requirements. The first one is functional. Functional focuses on performance, quality, and usability. Functional requirements: what the solution must do. Non-functional requirements is performance, quality, and usability. And business requirements: the problem to solve or value to deliver. Technical requirements are platforms, integrations, and constraints. On the next slide, we look at the characteristics of good requirements. Yes, you may have requirements, but what makes a good requirement and what is a bad requirement? Good requirements help ensure that the project is understood, designed, and delivered in the right way. They reduce confusion, prevent reworks, and keep everyone aligned on what needs to be achieved. So there are 4 types of good requirements. You have specific, meaning your requirement must not be vague. A good requirement must be clear, detailed, and not ambiguous. It should be easy to understand and leave no room for misunderstanding. For example, if I had a requirement saying improve reporting, that's a bad requirement because it's not specific. A good requirement would be generate a monthly automated report showing enrollment by area of study. That's a good requirement. That's a good specific requirement. Why does this matter? It prevents misunderstandings and ensures that everybody knows exactly what must be delivered. Measurable. Can you quantify the requirement? A requirement should include a criteria you can measure so you know when it has been met. Like for instance, make the system faster. You cannot measure faster, so that is a bad requirement. A good requirement would be reduce system load time to under 3 minutes. You can measure that because if your system uploads or loads more than 3 seconds, then it has failed. So instead of saying make the system faster, instead say reduce the system load time to under 3 seconds. If you can't measure it, you cannot confirm whether the requirement has been met. The last good requirement is testability. You must be able to prove the requirement has been implemented correctly. This means the requirement should be written in a way that allows for testing, validation, and inspection. A good example of a testable good requirement is users should be able to upload a file up to 10 megabytes. You can definitely test that. And the reason why this matters is testability ensures quality and accountability during delivery. The next part is feasibility. The requirement must be realistic. Given time, budget, technical capabilities, and resources. A bad example of a feasible requirement is build a fully automated system in 2 weeks. That's not feasible. A good feasible requirement would be create a basic prototype of the automated system in 2 weeks. Why does this matter? Feasible requirements prevent frustration, delays, and project failures. By now, I'm sure you have noticed that there's a constant trend, things that you shouldn't do and how to do them to avoid misunderstanding, frustration, delays, rework, and all those things can actually cost you a budget, and you don't want to do that. So make sure your requirements are good requirements, not just requirements. The next stage, we'll switch to stakeholder engagement in project design. Stakeholder engagement is fundamental in project design because stakeholders provide critical insight about needs, pain points, and expectations. When you involve them early, you reduce the risk of redesigning the solution. You reduce misunderstanding, and you also build trust. Trust is very important when it comes to stakeholder engagement because they are trusting you to deliver something and not work on assumptions. The key takeaway on this slide is design with stakeholders, not for them. So the key word is with stakeholders, meaning it has to be a collaborative effort. Now, how do we engage with stakeholders effectively? Well, I have listed 5 ways. You conduct interviews and surveys, workshops, co-design sessions, prototypes and models, regular reviews, and feedback loops. And the next part of the slide, there are tools how to engage. There are 2 main tools that in project management we use, and that is Power Interest Matrix and RACI Matrix. So before we use these tools, we have to identify, we're going to look at stakeholder identification and analysis. Figuring out, in this stage, you're figuring out who are your stakeholders and understanding what role they play and how to engage them effectively. It ensures the right people are involved, informed, and aligned throughout the project. In the Power Interest Matrix, this helps you map stakeholders based on power, how much influence they have over the project. Interest, how much they care about the project outcomes. So if a stakeholder has high power, high interest, these are key players. So you must manage these stakeholders closely. If a stakeholder has high power, low interest, these stakeholders are influential, but not deeply invested. You have to keep these stakeholders, you have to keep them satisfied. Low power, high interest. These stakeholders are supportive, but not influential. These stakeholders, all you have to do is keep them informed. Now, when a stakeholder is low power and low interest, they have minimal involvement. And in this stage, all you're doing is monitoring them as needed. The goal is to decide how to communicate and collaborate with each group. So you use your time wisely. So in other words, you don't want to invest so much time giving a low power, low interest stakeholder. No, you don't. That's a misuse of time and resources. Your energy should be more on the high power, high interest, because they are the ones who are fully invested in this, in your project. The next tool is the RACI matrix. This is a responsibility assignment matrix. It clarifies roles and responsibilities. And RACI, it's an acronym. R for responsibility, R for responsible, does the work. A, accountability, owns the decision and final approval. And C, consulted, provides input. And I, informed, needs updates, but not involved. So when you identify your stakeholders based on the power interest, then you can take that stakeholder, like if, for instance, if you've identified, I'll just use a random name. If you've identified Joe as a high power, high interest, and you need to manage him closely, then that means you have to make sure that you are putting him in the right category, right? Is he the one who does the work? Does he own the decision and final approval? Does he provide input? Does he need updates? Chances are he may need all four. So assign roles to each major task. Prevents confusion about who does what, avoids overlaps and gaps. And the reason why we do this is to ensure clarity, accountability, and smooth coordination across the team. In summary, stakeholder identification and analysis helps you understand who is involved, how to work with them. While power interest matrix helps you categorize your stakeholder and choose the right way to communicate or engage with them. While RACI metrics defines clear roles and responsibilities so that everybody understands their part in the project. Design, documentation, and deliverables. So sometimes you may think that documentation is the end goal. Documentation is not the end goal. Documentation is a tool. So how do we document? So when it comes to documentation, there are 6 core outputs, which are project charter. The project charter is the official starting document, which it provides the project purpose, objective, high-level scope, key stakeholders, and initial constraints. The reason for having this document, it authorizes the project and gives the project manager or project team the authority to use the resources and begin planning. The next one is requirements documents, what to deliver. This document requirement defines exactly what the project must deliver. It details needs, of users, customers, stakeholders, and it includes functional requirements, non-functional requirements, constraints, and acceptance criteria. The reason why we have requirements document, it describes what the solution must do and ensures all stakeholders agree on the expectations. The third one is design specification, how to build. This is your blueprint for the solution. It describes the systems design, workflow design, architecture, components, and integrations. The reason why we have this, it explains how the requirements will be met and provides instructions for developers, implementers. The next one is the work breakdown structure, also referred to as WBS. The WBS breaks the project into smaller, manageable pieces or tasks. It includes deliverables, work packages, and activities. A WBS provides a clear view of all the work required, making scheduling, estimating, and resource planning easier. Number 5 is the project management plan. The project management plan outlines how the project will be managed across all key areas. It covers the scope, schedule, costs, risks, quality, communications, and resources. This is your playbook for managing and controlling your project. And number 6, the risk register, tracking your risks. The risk register identifies and analyzes and tracks all project risk. It includes potential risk, the probability and impact of that risk, mitigation strategies, and who owns that risk and the status. This helps the team manage unknowns proactively. This helps the team manage unknowns proactively instead of reacting to surprises. So in summary, these six deliverables ensure a complete and well-structured project design. Project charter, why the project exists, requirement documents, what the project must deliver, design specification, how the solution will be built, WBS, how the work is organized, project management plan, how the project will be ran, risk register, how risks will be managed. Quality, risk, and success factors. First, we look at the quality. This principle means that quality should be built into the project from the very beginning through deliberate planning and strong processes. You cannot rely on inspections or testing at the end to fix problems. No. Quality must be embedded throughout the design and development. Think of it as quality is proactive, not reactive. So with quality, you're going to look at defining the quality standards. The next one, you're going to plan the quality process, followed by building reviews. Then you're going to create test strategies, how the design will be validated. And lastly, document acceptance criteria. The last stage is actually very important because if that's a sign off for you to say, from your stakeholders, letting you know that they have accepted the standard of your quality, how you have defined quality, and that the product or project that you're delivering is or meets their needs. Quality is not something that you sprinkle at the end of the project. It must be designed into every step of the project through clear standards, strong processes, regular reviews, planned testing, and well-defined acceptance criteria. And as you can see, prevention is definitely cheaper than correction. Risk management and design. There are 4 steps that need to happen during your risk management design. You're going to identify potential risk, and this means brainstorming, thinking about every possible risk that can happen. It doesn't matter whether it's big or small, silly or makes sense. Make sure you have a register for that. And then you're going to analyze the probability and impact. So when you identify your risks, what is the probability of this risk happening? And if it does happen, how much impact is it going to have on the entire project? Next part is plan the resources. In this stage, in case one of those risks happen, you have to have a plan on how you're going to mitigate that risk. How are you going to solve it? And then the last part is monitor. Always track your project. Always go back and look at what could possibly happen. Is this project running the way it's supposed to run? And this is not just this exercise doesn't happen once. You constantly have to keep going through your project to identify or monitor any risk that could happen. It's easier for you to fix a risk early than later. Critical success factors for project design. And as you can see, these are the factors that separate a successful project from a failed project. Always have your stakeholders informed all the time. Get their input. If they ask you for a meeting, drop everything, meet your stakeholder, because they are the key player. Clear requirements. Make sure your requirements for your project, to support your project, are specific, measurable, and validated. Appropriate detail. The right level for project context. Make sure that your project is tailored to the context. Don't assume. Always ask questions, and tailor your project to the scope. Don't just use one size fits all, because not one size fits all does not work. The other thing is, be aware of your risks. Be proactive in managing risks. Have a register. Continue to monitor your project, making sure that these risks don't come up. And sometimes you may have a risk register, and as you're going through your project, you find there's another risk has popped up. Put that risk on the register and begin immediately to find ways to mitigate that risk. Quality focus. Build quality in from the start. I'm sure most of you know the term, the phrase garbage in, garbage out. So if you want your project to be successful, make sure you're building in quality from day one, from the scope. And then flexibility. Sometimes designs change. There are factors that can change, that can change the whole scope of a project. Be flexible enough to change. Okay, I guess we are at the end of the presentation. And I would like to acknowledge the Pembroke. This is a project management body of knowledge, which I rely on heavily. So if you're interested in knowing more about project management, please reach out to me. And I just want to thank everyone for joining the workshop. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask me. Okay, no questions. Once again, thank you so much for joining this workshop. We will have another workshop that will hone into prototyping and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stella. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
We'll stay on for a little longer. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or let us know.
Also, a quick reminder, your abstracts are due on February 13th. And so try to get those in quickly. If you guys have any questions, please email the SPH Hackathon email and let us know. I'm also happy to help workshop any ideas any of you might have in case you're still stuck in the idea phase and trying to figure out how to get from idea into translating that into a prototype for a project, which means basically creating, taking your idea into the next step of how to plan and do your project and what that might require or look like. Happy to help with that as well. If you have not already registered, we are happy to still continue to keep that open for you. That date will be, or that registration window will be closing once abstract submissions are due as well. So please keep that in mind. And if you already sent in an abstract and still need to make adjustments, please email us and let us know before also resubmitting your application. That's 500 words of an abstract. It's very crucial for the judging process. So please take your time and let us know if you have any questions.